Hello and welcome to the show, guys. Dealings with Feelings. We're going to have a great guest on today. Before we get started, per normal, I'd like to ask you guys if you could like, share, subscribe, follow wherever you're listening to today. You can find us on Spotify and Apple under Guys Dealings with Feelings, and YouTube and Instagram under I2U Thrive. That's the letter I, the number two, the letter U, Thrive. And so today, I'm so happy and grateful to have our guest on today, Liam Naden. He's going to touch on several topics with us, including marriage and relationships, how we end up with the results we end up with in our lives, problem solving, and more. He's a speaker, teacher, author, coach, and world traveler. I'm so excited to get to learn from Liam today. And so welcome on, Liam. I'm going to, a little housekeeping, I'm going to put a link in this episode's description to Liam's website. It's got his free webinar titled How to Unlock Your Brain's Hidden Power for True Life Success. His latest book, which is titled Marriage Uncounseling, a counterintuitive approach to healing relationships and bringing back love, and his coaching program, Let Yourself Off the Hook, with online masterclass. So welcome in, Liam, man. How you doing?
Hi, Aaron. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Coming to us from Europe, is that correct?
Yes, I'm in Denmark.
Denmark, that is
Right.
outstanding. Outstanding. So, and I'd like to get to know you a little bit and kind of how you landed with the information in that you have. And I know a lot of it is life experience. You've had some ups and some downs and some ups again. And so why don't you share a little background on how you landed in the situation where you're talking to people about these type topics?
Sure. Well, probably like everyone listening and watching, and probably like you yourself, you wonder what's really going on in your life when you're barreling along in a certain direction and you're working towards goals and dreams, and you've got these things that you're trying to figure out and that you think you have figured out, and things are going pretty well, and then all of a sudden life throws you this completely unexpected thing, which on the surface of it appears to be really bad, but turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you, or something really positive in your life. And that's what happened to me, because for most of my life I've been one of these people driven to be successful. I've always wanted to know, how can I be more successful? How can I have a really great life, not just a mediocre life? So I went looking for success in all sorts of directions. And after university, I went and set up my own businesses, became really successful in business. I've had 18 different businesses in my life. And some were really successful, others not so. And I built up a really great lifestyle. I became a multimillionaire and doing a lot of the things that people would say were really enviable, lots of travel and living in nice homes and things like that. And I was always also a student of success. I always wanted to learn more about how to be successful. So I do everything from study religion and spirituality, different like meditation and different practices, and also the whole area of self-help, personal development, motivation, peak performance, goal setting. And I was the guy, I'd go to as many seminars as I could, try to learn more about success, read lots of books, did lots of courses, studied everything I could. So not only was I, if you like, experiencing a lot of material success, but I thought I'd figured out what being in control of your life really was and how to do it. And I had all my goals set down, and I knew about using your mind the right way and being motivated and inspired and all these things, and
Mhm.
changing your beliefs. So all these different practices. However, a couple of things were particularly noticeable about my life that I felt looking back. One was I had all this external success. Now, I was a multimillionaire, as I said, and I had what many people would say was an enviable lifestyle, but I never was really that happy. And in particular, I had a lot of problems, a lot of stress in my life. And I was led to believe, or I'm sure I read it in many books, where people would say, well, problems and stress, they're just a natural part of being successful. If you want to be successful, if you want to have a great life, you have to learn how to overcome obstacles. And you have to learn how to deal with problems, and you have to learn to put up with stress. That's that's what comes with the territory. Now, the funny thing was, many years later, when when my life changed, I understood that none of that's actually true, and we can talk about why problems and stress aren't actually necessarily a natural part of life. But anyway, that's what I thought. So I had all these problems and stress, and I never really felt that I'd nailed it, that I really was at a place where I felt happy with my life. I always thought there's something more, there's something else, there's something that's missing. Is this all there is? No matter what success I achieved. And in some areas of my life, I wasn't that successful. My relationships weren't that great. I was always having, problems with romantic marriage problems, if you like. And other areas weren't going so well. But anyway, I thought I'd nailed it, as I said. But in my mid 40s, something happened. It was that defining moment, that moment of tragedy, because I literally overnight went from being in this multi-millionaire environment to losing everything, literally lost the lot. And I ended up homeless with no money. And the only place I could go was back to live with my elderly mother. And I ended up sleeping on the sofa in the living room in her small apartment. And this was like this was just a drastic change to my life. And when I was there, I was completely, obviously, at a very low, as you know, when these tragedies strike, you just get into this terrible state. And there were two questions that kept coming back, and maybe people listening or watching might relate to these questions. Maybe if they've been through a real bad experience, maybe they've asked those questions themselves or even asking those questions. And the first question I asked was, why has this happened to me? Because I was the master. I knew everything about how to visualize, and I had all my goals written down. I knew how to use my mind for, you know, be a positive thinker. I was a massive action taker. I would do anything to make something work and to go after an opportunity. But still, it was like none of that information was of any use, because being homeless, sleeping on the sofa in my mother's apartment in the living room, that was not on my goals list.
Right.
And I'm sure people listening say, that's right. They never planned or wanted a tragedy to happen in their life. So, and they probably asked that question like I did, why has this happened to me? I don't deserve this. And the other question that I continually asked was, what do I do now? Because I had no clue on how to get out of my situation. I literally had lost all my friends, my sources of income, all my possessions, and I'd moved to a town where I didn't know anybody, and I literally had no clue on what to do to get out of that situation, how to fix things, if you like.
Mhm.
But it was interesting. We could come back to those two questions. Why has this happened to me? And what do I do about it? And the answers I came up with, and how that really, what I didn't realize at the time, but what it biologically did. And we can talk about the biology of how we are and who we are and how things work in our life, how they really work while we're busy trying to make them work. There's a biology at work that actually is what makes our life turn out the way it does. But anyway, by answering those two questions in a particular way, what happened to me was really quite amazing after that. And reading your story, Aaron, it sounds like you had a similar experience, because what it actually created was a big shift in my life. I didn't understand what the shift was, but I do now, and this is the basis of what I teach and talk about to people. But essentially, I made a big shift. And what happened then was my life went in a completely different direction, and a much better direction. And I mentioned earlier, before we came online, I spent 8 years sailing around 15 countries on my own yacht,
Wow.
which I finished doing last year. Then I moved on to a motorhome, which I'm doing now, just cruising around, in total freedom, really, managing my businesses from a remote location, if you like, just being where I want to be. I found a much better relationship than I'd ever had before. I said earlier I wasn't very good at making good
Right.
relationships. And also, I was setting up new businesses. I was making really good money again, and I had the freedom really to do anything I wanted to do. But there were a couple of big differences. I said my life was really different because in some ways that sounds fairly similar. I was becoming wealthy again, if you like. But there were a couple of big differences. And one of the big differences was I didn't really have any stress and problems. And I remember thinking, why is my life like this? This is so much better than it used to be. This is actually really fun. I'm actually really enjoying my life. I feel in control of my life. I'm doing things that I love to do rather than being held back by problems and stress. And the way I like to describe it is, in my previous life, it was like I was chasing after success all the time. I was always, saying, what else do I need to learn? What do I need to know? Where's the next opportunity? What's the next biggest goal? Okay, I've achieved this. But I'm not satisfied. What do I need to achieve? What's the bigger goal that I need to go after? And how can I do it? What book do I need to read? What information do I need to get? How can I figure out how to become, to get more, if you like? So I was really chasing after success. But this time around, in a strange sort of way, and the only way I can really describe it is to say that instead of chasing after success, it was as if success was literally coming after me. Success was chasing me. Because instead of me trying to force things to happen, make things happen, be all motivated and all stressed and, really on the alert all the time to try and force things to happen, things were just happening. And, sometimes we might call them luck or coincidence. I used to think that's what it was until I figured out what was going on. But I remember once, for instance, I was in a retail store and a man walked in and I hadn't seen him for 25 years. And he recognized me and he said, "Hey, Liam, what are you up to?" And I had to admit politely, not a lot, because I had no money. I was actually doing a bit of work, part-time work, to try and get some money together, working in this retail store. But he said, "Hey, Liam, there's an opportunity for a business that you would be perfect for," because he knew what I used to do in previous businesses. And he said, "It's an opportunity just opening up in the premises right next to mine. Why don't you come and do that?" And I thought, well, sounds a great idea, but the problem is I don't have any money. But it was only about 2 months later, here I was in this new business, my own business. I set it up from scratch and it was very successful. Now, I don't really know what happened to me. Well, I didn't know what had happened to me at the time, but somehow it all came together. All the money showed up, the right people showed up, the right opportunities showed up. Obviously, I was putting in effort. I wasn't just sitting there and waiting for it all to happen. But it was like clockwork. Everything just flowed and fell into place. And that's really what my life became after that tragic experience of losing everything. So I said to myself, I'm going to do two things. Firstly, I'm going to figure out what I'm doing differently, because this is so good. I don't want to mess it up. I want to know what I'm doing right. So I went on a mission to really start to learn and understand and explore a whole lot of different areas. And the great thing was, when I started to do this in a different way, there were new ideas, new thought processes, if you like, or new areas of research that started to show themselves to me, if you like, that really held the answers. It was like things started to fit together as to what was really going on and what I was really doing. So that's what I managed to do, was figure it out without trying to sound like I know everything. I figured out a model, the way we are literally designed, that worked, was explaining why my life was working a lot better. And I said to myself, the other thing, not only is this really helpful for me, and I want to figure out what I'm doing right so that I can keep doing it, but when I do sort of figure it out, I'm going to share it with other people, because I think this could be really valuable. Because all I'd ever seen up until that point was people struggling and in pain, and not really, in other words, being like I used to be, stressed, unhappy, always feeling there was something else, always at the mercy of their problems, always at the mercy of unexpected bad things happening in their life, and never really getting to the point of where I felt I was getting to, which was feeling in the flow, feeling like my life has a purpose, feeling happy, feeling great about life. And that's what I do now, is I've created really an understanding of how we're biologically designed, not for problems and stress, because problems and stress are not a part of the natural world. We can talk a little bit about that, why that is. But we're not designed for problems and stress, actually, even though nearly all of us have them. We're designed biologically to be successful, because we live in a world that is based on biological success. That's how everything survives and thrives. And it's all to do with how this mechanism, or how we're designed biologically. And when we understand how to use this mechanism, we start to live in a natural way, which is, as I say, is based on being successful, being happy, not dealing with problems and stress all the time.
Okay, well that's great. I'm excited to hear more about this and what your approach has been. I've had a similar, um, I don't know, epiphany, I guess. Perspective shift was massive in my life, and it was a lot of the same light bulbs came on, a lot of the same opportunity type things presented themselves. I believe I was paying attention to them more, so the filters in my brain were then in turn filtered doing the same. The reticular activating system. So I'm excited to hear more about this, man. And so you went to 15 countries on your yacht, eh?
Yeah, and a few
That's
more as well, not on the yacht, but so I've done a
yeah,
lot of travel.
yeah, for sure. And that was an 8-year thing.
Yep, that's
Okay,
right.
great,
Right.
man. That's so awesome. And so I think that people would like to know, did you do so when you were on mom's couch? You'd fallen from grace, if you will, and you were on mom's couch with nothing. You went to work at the retail store,
For a
and
few,
that's where
for a part time, that was just, yeah, to earn
briefly.
something. It wasn't a full time job. Yeah.
And then you met, and then some things just began to fall into place for you, and that's where you were like, "Wow, how had this happen?" Okay, great, because a lot of us are kind of in that struggle, maybe on mom's couch, and they're really searching for these answers and things. So, how to eliminate fear and stress in an uncertain world? How do we go about doing this?
Well, I think it all comes down to understanding that what I said earlier, your biology is designed for success. And the role that stress and fear play in that, you need to redefine what that is. Because when you understand what fear and stress do to you biologically and what they do to your chances for success, if you like, then you look at it in quite a different way. Because here's the thing: when I started to really study this and study what was happening to me and what the difference was, and I started off in an area, I knew all of these different things about goal setting, mind set, subconscious mind, all these different things. But I thought, let's take it back to basics here. And I started to look at biology. And what I realized was all of nature, including, well, firstly, we have a biological body. We live in a natural world, and we're governed by natural laws. And those natural laws override everything else. That's the way things operate, are based on natural laws. So, for instance, the law of gravity is an obvious one. You know that when you walk off a 10-story building, the law of gravity is going to take over. And it doesn't matter how hard you want to think otherwise, or how motivated you are, how much you visualize, how much you pray and say, I am going to fly into the air. Whatever you do, doesn't matter what else mind games you play with yourself or what effort you put in, you're not going to go up in the air when you walk off a building. The law of gravity is going to override everything you try to do. So that's just one of the laws, but there's actually a law of biological success. And if you were to ask any biological scientist, what is the purpose of life, biological life? How do living things operate? They would all tell you that the primary purpose, the number one overriding purpose of all life and the way it operates, is it's striving to survive. That's its primary purpose, is to survive. Everything is wired and designed to survive. And when you really think about that, the next logical thing you realize is that everything is wired to be the best it can be, because being the best it can be gives it the greatest chance for survival. When an organism or an animal or a plant or anything, when it's strong and healthy, that gives it the greatest chance for living the longest. So it's literally wired and designed to be its best. And the thing about the biological world, and even people like Charles Darwin, the evolution man,
Mhm.
talk about this in some of his writings. And he said, and when he really started to observe nature, which is obviously what he was doing, studying the theory of evolution, he started to notice that all of the problems, all of the inefficiencies, if you like, in nature have all been sorted and ironed out over billions of years. So, in other words, the billions of years of development of nature, in that time, nature has figured out the best ways to survive, the best ways to be its best. So, because of that, we have this natural system that's perfectly designed for everything to be its best so that it has the greatest chance for survival, as I said. And for humans, because we're biological, we operate under the same system. But a couple of important things to realize about that. One is, why are we not being our best? And what does being our best mean? Well, being our best for humans doesn't just mean being physically our best, but we all know that the better you are physically, the more chance you have for survival. Whereas if you're stressed and unhealthy, it's going to shorten your life. So, but it doesn't just mean physically, it also means mentally and emotionally. In other words, feeling good. In other words, being happy. You know that when you're happy and when you're feeling good, you're more resourceful, you're more motivated, you come up with better ideas, you do better things, you're more productive, both to yourself and to other people. You give more, you're more generous, you're more loving. In other words, you're making your chances of survival and those around you greater when you feel good. So we actually have a biological purpose of being happy, feeling good. So, and feeling good, if that's if that's going to help us survive longer, then what do problems and stress do? They do the opposite. They don't make us survive longer because they're not making us feel happy. So therefore, on a purely biological level, you can logically say that problems and stress, there's something about those that aren't natural, because nature has worked out a way to make sure that nothing has problems and stress, because that doesn't help biological survival. So the only other question is, why do we have problems and stress? Why aren't we all being the best that we can be? Why aren't we living our biological purpose? Why aren't we living in the state where we're designed to live, like all of nature is designed to live, where we're being the best that we can be so we have this greatest chance for survival? Well, that comes down to understanding how nature, or how science, or how biology has designed us to be, and all living things to be the best they can be. And it's provided every living thing, every organism, a mechanism, or what I like to call a machine, that ensures that that organism is the best that it can be for the greatest chance for survival. And that mechanism is a brain. And a brain turns out literally to be the machine that's designed to make you and every living thing the best that it can be so it has the greatest chance for survival. So in other words, the brain for humans is designed to make us happy, fulfilled, doing what we're supposed to do, avoid problems, doing the right things, doing great things, feeling fulfillment, purpose, gratitude, love, all those things in our life. That's what the brain is designed to do. And it does this on a predictable level, just like it does with every other living organism. But here's the thing, why wouldn't it work right? Why wouldn't we get those results? Why is it that, as somebody said recently, humans or other species are 98% successful? There's a 98% success rate where all animals and other organisms are being the best that they can be, giving them the greatest chance for survival. In fact, science has a word for that. It's called homeostasis. And homeostasis means the optimal functioning of the organism. And every living thing is wired to achieve and live in this state called homeostasis, where everything is functioning to the best it can. So nature does this with a 98% success rate. But we as humans, we do it with a 98% failure rate. Because if you were to ask most people, are you happy? Do you feel you're being the best that you can be? Do you really feel fulfilled, excited? Or do you have problems in your life? And most people would say, no, I'm living way below my potential. I've still got lots of things that I would rather not have in my life, or things that I want in my life. My life's far from that I can feel really excited and happy in every moment about it. In other words, 98% of us aren't living in this natural biological state of homeostasis that we're designed to do. So there's only one reason that can be, and that is this machine that's designed to create the state for us. For some reason, we're not using it the right way. We haven't, let's face it, how many of us have ever been taught how to use our brain? We've never even been told that this is what the brain's there to do. We've never been told this is how everything is wired biologically, that we are literally, every living thing is wired for success and that they have a brain to make sure that happens. We've never even been told that, but we've certainly never been told how to use it. And if you think of the brain as a machine, an analogy I like to use is a motor car, because a motor car is just a machine. And when you think about it, what someone says, well, what does a motor car do? Well, it's pretty obvious. It's got one purpose. It's to get you from where you are to where you want to go. Now, it's going to do that completely predictably, reliably. It's going to give you an enjoyable ride. You don't have to worry about whether it's going to do it or not, because that's what it's designed to do. But why wouldn't it do that? It would only do that if you weren't driving it the right way. In other words, perhaps you're putting the wrong fuel in, or you just didn't know how to drive a car and you didn't know what all the buttons and levers did, so you didn't drive it properly. I mean, imagine if somebody came out of, I don't know, the jungle, never seen a car before and didn't know how to drive it, and someone said, oh, it's a machine that will take you 100 miles over the hill there. And the person might have no clue about how to drive it, so they'd look at it and say, well, maybe, oh, I know how to do it. The way to do it is to get out and push, or stand behind it and push the car along. Maybe that's how it's designed to work. Now, of course, what would happen if somebody did that? They wouldn't get very far. It would be a struggle. All that would happen is they'd become exhausted with no result or very little. The car wouldn't move very far, if at all. And imagine that person said to themselves, the problem is me. I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not motivated enough. I need to be stronger. I need to be more determined. I need to build up my muscles. Maybe I need to get some new shoes. I need to learn how to push harder. And you'd think that person, that's utterly ridiculous. Why are they doing it why are they making it so hard for themselves? Because all it's doing is wearing them out. It's not getting the result. But if you said to that person, look, this is how the car works. This is how you drive it. And when you use it this way, they'd go, well, I didn't realize it was so simple and so easy. And I can actually get on and do what I'm supposed to do with a car, which is just enjoy the journey. It's the same with the brain. When you understand how to use it, you give up all the struggle and you replace it instead with enjoying the journey, doing what you need to do when you need to do it, so that your life unfolds in the way it's supposed to, which is for you to be the best that you can be, so that you survive for as long as you can. It really is that simple.
So when I think about instinctive us, and we look at animals, you talk about their success rate, and we'll do a domestic animal. So our dogs, our dogs do have stress, right? They're worried if they're going to eat or not. And animals in the wild, they're going to stress, are they going to be eaten or not? So squirrel by a hawk, hawks are about, is he going to eat me? How do we separate? So there's something in us that, for alarm purposes, if nothing else, how do we step away from that? How are we not stressed when we're out of money on mom's couch?
Well, I think the first thing to realize is, actually, is that the way nature works? Because I've done a lot of, one of the great things about sailing around on a yacht is you get to have a good close look at nature all of the time. And all of the study I've done, the research, as well as my own personal experience, it's not actually true that animals get stressed looking for food. What actually happens in the natural world, it's like this perfect dance. Again, Darwin referred to this, and other people have referred to this as well. There's this perfect harmony between animals. So if you look at a bird, the problem, domestic animals are a slightly different thing because they've been influenced by us as humans. But animals in the natural world, if they need food, they find food. There's no stress attached to it. And they usually, in a balanced environment, they find all the food they need. So this idea of having to struggle to find what we want, this is the fundamental problem, because what we're not aware of is that we have this machine. It's a 500 trillion microprocessor computer. It has more power than any supercomputer on the planet. So it's this vastly, almost infinitely powerful machine designed for one purpose, and that's to make sure that everything happens in your life and that you do everything that is for the best for you, so that you feel your best. So if we really understood that, if we really knew that, then we wouldn't struggle and stress. Because what would you rather do? Would you rather try and figure it all out yourself, how to find food, what to do, how to solve a problem, how to reach your so-called goals? Would you rather do that? Or would you say, there's a 500 trillion microprocessor computer, already knows exactly what I want. It knows exactly how to get what I want. I'll just let it do the work. I'll let it do its job. I'll let it find it for me. And I'm sure if people really think about it, this is why I said right at the beginning, talking about unexpected things, because how many times have we been barreling along in our life, focused on getting something, but what really makes the difference in our life is something completely unexpected, something we weren't expecting at all. Now, it could be a tragedy, as has happened to you, and of course happened to me as well. But what about all the good things? If you're married or in a relationship, the person you're with, did you actually think about being with them before you were? I mean, the night before you met them, did you say, well, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'm going to meet this person. This is what they're going to look like. And we're going to get married and have children and build our life together. That's not how it happens. It comes from somewhere else beyond our thinking, stress-based, trying to figure it out stuff. And that's really a different way of, this is understanding how the brain actually works. Your brain, your life does not create success through struggle and force and trying to make it happen. It comes to you in different ways. Another way of explaining this is we've all had the experience where you've been working on a problem and it's really stressing you out and you don't know what to do. And then for some reason you get distracted for a while, or you start doing something else, and all of a sudden you get this idea and you go, that's the answer to that problem. Why didn't I think of that before? That's so obvious. Where did that come from? It didn't come from you struggling and straining. It came from this other part of your brain. And this other part of your brain, I've actually created a 4-part brain model. And this part of your brain, it's not the struggle part. It's not the stress part. It's not the thinking part. It's not the trying to make things happen part. It's what I call the creative brain. The creative brain, this is a biological place inside your skull. This is a separate biological function. Your creative brain is where you get all of your intuition, obviously your creativity, your imagination, your inspiration, your motivation. It's the true problem-solving part of your brain. And it's the part of your brain that knows exactly what you should do and when you should do it. And it's that part that, sometimes you get that little voice within you that tells you should do something or you shouldn't do something. And often we call it the quiet voice within sometimes, don't we? And we often don't want to admit that it's probably telling the truth. It's saying to us, don't do that. Don't get involved with that person. But we do it anyway because our thinking brain, our fear-based brain overrides it. But this part of the brain, the creative brain, this is the part we're supposed to use to manage our life. This is the part that's designed to make sure that we do the right things at the right time, the right things happen at the right time, and that our life flows without problems and stress. So we only create the problem, if you like the machine thing, the problem happens when we're not using that part of the brain, when we're using a different part of the brain, which I call the survival brain. And the survival brain doesn't know how to solve problems, it doesn't know what we want, it doesn't know what's best for us, it doesn't know what our goals should be, it doesn't know any of those things. All it knows is how to fight off a threat or a danger. And we activate that part of the brain, that survival part, with fear, stress, worry, and anxiety. Because when you feel fear, stress, worry, and anxiety, what your brain is literally saying on a biological level, you are faced with a threat to your survival, and that shuts down the creative brain. And it activates this survival state, which can't help you. And that's what I realized when I went from struggling on my mother's couch, was the answer to those 2 questions, why has this happened to me? And what do I do about it? Remember I said they were the 2 questions that I continue ask. You know what the answer was? The perfect answer? I don't know. And when I admitted I didn't know why it had happened to me and what to do about it, I stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped the stress. I stopped the struggle. And what I didn't realize at the time was that's when my creative brain was able to be activated and able to say, and it's the only way it can be activated. Why? And that was it finally said to me, right, good, you're out of the way. Now I can get on with bringing you what you really should have in your life. And one of the ways to know this is how it works is to think about that. We've been actually taught this by religion throughout history. The Bible, for instance, teaches this because the Bible says more than I think it's 365 times someone once counted. The Bible says 3 words: be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now, the reason it says that is not just a nice idea. This is a biological instruction, because when you feel fear, stress, worry, and anxiety, you shut off this creative part of your brain and you activate this instinctive survival part of your brain. This is a biological process. So it really why I say how to eliminate fear and stress from your life, that should be and is, for me and people I help, that's all you need to do. That's all you need to focus on. Is say, how can I get rid of fear and stress out of my life? Because when you do that, you activate this other part of your brain, and that takes care of all of the details as to what you should be doing. You don't need to figure it out. This creative brain, if you talk to people who write songs, musicians, it's always fascinating. I was watching something the other day about a very famous songwriter, and he was asked, where did you get the idea for that song from? Where did the tune come from? And everyone who's asked that, every songwriter says the same thing. And they say, I don't know. It just came to me. I don't know where it came from. So it didn't come from struggle and trying to figure it out. And it just came from somewhere else. It comes from the creative brain. It comes from your inspirational part. And we're not all songwriters, but we all have access to this part which knows the right thing we should be doing and the way we should be looking at things and the way we should be handling our life situation so that we avoid problems and we use what happens in our life for the best and for our best as well. And this is where it comes down to tragedy as well, isn't it? That, what you've said, that what happened to you turned out to be a really good thing. And certainly what happened to me, losing everything, I'm so grateful for that. I'm more grateful for that experience than anything in my life. Because if it wasn't for that experience, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't know any of this stuff. I wouldn't have been able to go on and try and figure this stuff out and live a much happier life than I ever had. I'd still be struggling and trying to force things to happen in my life rather than understanding there's a part of me that's much more powerful that will do that. So I'm really grateful for that experience. And I think everyone who goes through a really tragic experience does come with a different perspective and realizes and sees the gift that presented. The number of people you're helping, Aaron, through your show, you wouldn't be able to help other people the way you are if what had happened to you hadn't happened, if anything had been different. So there's a gift in this. There's a gift in everything, but you can only see that when you it's only your creative brain that allows you to see that, because this is the part that has awareness as well. When you're stuck in stress and frustration, what's normally happening? You're saying things to yourself, I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. What do I need to do? How do I solve this problem? And you've got all of this mess going around in your head, and you don't get anywhere. You don't know what to do. And usually what you do, certainly was for me, you do all the wrong things. You make lots of mistakes because your brain is confused. And of course it's confused because that part of your brain isn't designed to get you out of problems. It isn't designed to help you reach your goals or make you the best you can be. It's only there as a defense mechanism against a threat to your survival. So we need to get out of the habit, which most of us have got into, of using that part and expecting it to fix our life and to make our life work. It's not there to do that, and it never will.
Yeah, that's great. And so, and I hear you saying eliminating the stress and, worry problems. You do so with are you practicing mindfulness in that moment? And as you set yourself up, so let's just take the easy one. That's the elephant in the room, probably for a lot of people, and that's money, right? So we're out of money. That's a big stressful thing because the world takes money to go around. I know that I need to establish a means of making money, and I do so. And taking steps, taking action. But I don't need to work. If I'm doing those things, then I'll have the mindfulness to not worry and stress. Is that an appropriate?
Well, the real focus of my work, it's a little bit like with a motor car. If you want to get a great result with a motor car, instead of looking for a little quick tip on how to do something, you need to get to firstly understand how it works and how to drive it. If you go and get driving lessons, that's the first thing the instructor is going to tell you. It's not like spend 2 minutes, I'll give you one idea and you can sail off to the sunset for the rest of your life. No, you need to learn how it works and you need to learn how to use it. And it's going to be uncomfortable and different and difficult to start with because you've never done it that way. And the second thing you need to do is create a habit of using it until it becomes automatic, till it becomes natural. So that's why, this is why that's the focus of me helping people, is firstly to get them to understand. Because here's the thing with your example of if you've got no money. Now, if you really understood on a deep level and you really knew that your brain is a 500 trillion computer microprocessor that is designed to make you the best that you can be, and it's going to make sure that you have all of the money that you need to do whatever you really want to do in your life. In other words, what's really going to be happy, and that might not be $10 million and buying a super yacht or, having a mansion, because that won't necessarily make you happy. Your brain knows what will make you happy. So it will make sure that everything that you need is provided for you to make you happy. Remember, we've heard that in the Bible. Do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, or wear. It will all be provided for you. As it is for all of the rest of nature. The birds, they do not worry about what to eat. And yet, how much greater are you? I'm sort of misquoting the Bible a little bit here, but how much greater are you than all those? Of course, it's going to be provided for you. So the Bible tells us that, and many people profess to follow and believe in the Bible, but we don't really believe it, do we? Because if we believed it, we wouldn't be stressed and worried. If we had no money, we would say, well, okay, I can't see right now where to earn more money, but my brain, this infinite machine, it's going to make sure the right things show up. So it's going to make a person come completely out of the blue and say to you, hey, Liam, here's an opportunity for you to make some money, or here's a new business idea, or here's a new career idea, or here's an unexpected something. And it's usually unexpected. So, if we understand that's our brain is there to do, then we don't get stressed about it. And when we don't get stressed about it, we don't activate the wrong part of our brain. We don't shut down the part that actually will make all of that happen. Now, that doesn't mean you do nothing. Of course, you're going to act on the opportunities when they show up. Because that's the other thing. When you use this part of your brain, this creative part, you're a lot more motivated. You take a lot more action. You're a lot more productive. You don't just sit in the corner terrified, which is what you do when you're using this other part of your brain. So it's a little bit like what everyone is trying to do is they're trying to solve their problems so that they feel better. It's like, well, when I've fixed my marriage, when I've got some money, then I'll feel happy. And then that'll be good. But what we don't realize is you have to do it the other way around. You have to get your brain, and I don't mean just smoking something or,
Right.
something that's going to make, I'm happy, It's nothing like that. It's truly biologically happy to the point where, or accepting to the point where you trust and you know that as long as you don't get stressed and worried about it, you're going to come up with the right ideas. You're going to see opportunities. Because here's the other thing. When you're shut down in this stress state, you miss all the opportunities. I mean, how many times have you met somebody and they're completely consumed by a problem and they've got an amazing life and they can't see what an amazing life they've actually got? And you're saying to them, why are you so stressed? Why are you so worried about these things? Okay, don't worry about that. That'll sort itself out. But you've got so much else to be grateful for. They can't see it. They literally cannot see the great things that are going on in their life. And it's because they're stuck in the wrong part of their brain. Their brain is not allowing them to see what the truth about their life. So you need to get to the stage of saying, like I'm saying about fear is the enemy. And this is essentially what I teach people through you mentioned my Let Yourself Off the Hook online masterclass, is all the ways you can remove fear and stress from your life. Because the first thing people say to me is, well, it's all very well for you, Liam, saying, don't worry about it. Don't have stress and fear in your life. But you haven't got my problems. You haven't had my background, my history. What about all the problems in the world? But here's the thing. You have total control, or a very large degree of control, and it becomes more and more once you understand it, over what you allow into your life. So, for instance, and what you need to realize is anything that makes you feel bad, you have to decide not to let it into your life. How do you do that? Some really simple things. Turn off the news. Why watch something that makes you feel bad? You don't have to do that. You don't have to be in a conversation with somebody that makes you feel bad. You don't have
Sure.
to be in a relationship with somebody that makes you feel bad. You don't have to be in a business or in a job or a career that makes you feel bad. You literally don't. Now, obviously, all of these things come at a cost, but if you knew that your brain, this machine, is right there and saying, look, you just get rid of all of that, and then once you stop feeling stressed and creating things in your life that making you feel worse, then I can get on and do the job and turn everything out to be much better. I do a lot of marriage and relationship work, and the number of people I've helped overcome this, who came to me originally because their marriage was in trouble and they desperately wanted to heal that marriage. And a lot of the times I helped them to do that. But a lot of times they didn't succeed. But I like to think most people have succeeded with my coaching on the most important thing, which is to do what they're supposed to do and be who they're supposed to be to have the greatest chance for survival, to have the best life possible. And often that involves accepting the fact that you're in the wrong relationship, that it's never going to make you happy. But what keeps you stuck in the wrong place, including the wrong relationship, is your fear. Oh, I've got to fix this because otherwise I'll be alone and I'll feel a failure and I'll be full of regrets. Those are all fears, but they all keep you stuck and they stop your brain, they stop your creative brain from getting on and bringing you the perfect relationship, the perfect lifestyle. So we have a lot of control over what we allow to make us feel bad, and we can make the decision. Now, a lot of the time it's a difficult decision, but it's a bit like if someone came up to you and said, drink this, you know, drink this. And you said, okay, well, what is it? They said, oh, it's hydrochloric acid. And you'd say, what? They'd say, yeah, just drink this. And you say, well, but I know what would happen if I drank that. It's going to damage my body. It's going to ruin my body. It'll probably even kill me. There's no way I'm going to drink that. And they said to you, look, no, what are you talking about? Hydrochloric acid is fine. There's been lots of studies I can show you about how it's not bad for you. And if you have faith and if you believe and you trust and you change your mindset, you'll be fine. It's actually going to be you can believe that it'll be really good for you and it will be good for you. And you would say, no, look, I'm sorry, you obviously don't understand how this works. There's no way that could ever be good for me. And then they said to you, look, if you don't drink it, I'm going to make sure that you lose everything you have, all your friends, your family, and you're going to end up living under a bridge, homeless, and with nothing. Now, you would still probably say, I'm sorry, I'm still not going to drink it. It doesn't matter what the justification, what the
Mhm.
stakes are, what you say, why I should, or whatever reason you think that it's not going to harm me. I know without a shadow of a doubt that if I put that into my system, it's going to damage or harm me. And this is the same with fear and stress. If we knew that it's a toxin, we haven't got time to go into the full biology of how it works and why we create this, but if we realize it's literally a chemical reaction that's creating this feeling of fear, stress, and worry, and if we knew that it affects the machinery of our brain, the success part of our brain, so that it shuts down all of the resources we need and everything we need to have the best life possible, and it keeps us stuck in a very disempowered, very painful place dealing with stress and problems, and it literally is a state which actually creates more problems, then we're going to say it doesn't matter the justification. I know that if I allow fear and stress into my life, it's going to activate the part of my brain I'm not going to get anywhere. It's going to ruin my life. We need to get to that level of understanding so that we're pretty ruthless, if you like, about what we allow into our life, and trusting and knowing that, all right, so you're not happy with what you're doing. I think it says somewhere else in the Bible, actually, if your leg is uh, troubling you, chop it off. It's the same thing. We have to sort of, and the only reason we wouldn't get rid of something toxic in our life, like the only reason we wouldn't turn off the news, or should I say, the only reason we wouldn't get rid of a relationship or leave a conversation, is because we're afraid. We're afraid that something else better won't be there. But if you knew that you had a brain that makes sure that the perfect thing will be there, why would you worry about that?
Yeah, I know a lot of us call that the leap of faith, and I think what helps when a tragedy strikes, and something I quote unquote preach. I don't do much of the religion stuff or anything like that, but it's the stuff that I talk about is using your tragedy as kind of the foundation of rebuilding yourself. And I think it really goes in what you're talking about, because when my son passes away, I, the things that used to worry me and stress me out, I can now see for the trivialness that they are. I can see that that's just, I built a career, but I don't want to do that. And I see how short life is, and I've got to do what I want to do, and it's so chicken and egg with the circle on, don't stress, uh, and worry, but then you must do things that, however it's come about, that we naturally stress about. So, like you say, if it's to abandon a job, our surroundings are so influential on how we are. So I agree 100% with those things you're talking about. It is what it is. We have to change what we have to change. And if the negative things are the relationships or the jobs or the this or the that or the other, we've got to change them. Those in themselves can cause stress, but we have to be aware. So that trust that the creative brain is going to prevail and win the day, is I believe where, and you correct me please if I'm wrong, I believe would be where there's got to be some form of faith, to be able to take the, what has to happen, if we're going to succeed and live our, best lives on a survival instinct to live the longest, as you were talking about biologically earlier, then we have to understand that we are going to take care of ourselves, and our brain is going to be strong enough to present the answers to the questions. And so,
Well, I think,
I
yeah,
go ahead.
but can I just say this thing? We've got this wrong idea about faith, if you don't mind me saying, because we think it's some difficult thing that when we don't understand something, we somehow have to just hold on and not let go. But what faith really is, true faith comes from understanding, or just knowing that that's the way things operate. And that comes from understanding. So when we drive down a road, do we have faith that cars coming the other way are not going to come in our path and hit us? Is that faith? Or is that just knowing that's just the way things are? Do we have faith that we're going to wake up in the morning, or we just know, well, we're going to wake up, our heart's going to keep beating? And we don't have faith. Most of our life is lived on faith, because they're not things we necessarily understand or we're even thinking about, but we're not worried about them happening. We just know that's the way it works. And that's what the point we really need to get to, rather than just, and that's why I mention religion, because it illustrates, it's telling us the same things, what I teach in a different way, but what I have found is the scientific evidence for what they're really saying. And so when you understand the science of how this works, the science of your brain, and on my website I have a model and I have a lot of descriptions and more understanding of how this actually works. But when you understand the science, you don't need to have any faith. You just know it works. You don't drive a motor car worried every 5 seconds. You don't get out every 5 seconds to check that the engine's still going to go, or that it's not blowing up or something. You just know it's going to work because you understand that's what it's there for. You understand how it works. So I think this is for me, it was a breakthrough idea, that it wasn't just a question of blind faith, because the problem with blind faith is it's more hope than anything. It's more, and it's fear-based. It'd be nice to think we have the certainty about faith, but we don't. We're still worried, and we're trying to convince ourselves that yes, we believe it, and we're hoping that it'll work. Whereas when you really understand it, and more importantly, when it comes to the brain, when you start using your brain correctly, and then you see the proof, you see the evidence of the way it's working, that's all the trust and faith you need, because you suddenly go, and this is what I teach in my coaching and in the webinar that you mentioned, was that you can start, when you start using it the right way, you see something happen and you go, how did that happen? Because you can't explain it on a logical level, but you can start to explain it on this inspirational level, this creative brain level. And you go, that's the creative brain at work. I've got some proof now that this works. And as soon as you get some proof that it works, you do more of it. And the more you do of it, you get into what we talked about. You get into a different habit to the way you use it. And then it becomes automatic. And you go back to thinking, why would I have ever done it any other way? So it's not based on faith. It's based on understanding.
Yeah, I would agree. Not blind faith. I do have to admit that I have faith in other drivers, and I have faith that my car's
Yeah.
going to start every time,
So
and
it's
I do.
understanding.
But but it is understanding. I understand that the car's supposed to start. I understand that people are supposed to stop at the red lights and all of that, and that's how things work. And I totally get what you're saying, and I agree. The more we understand about something working, the less it is blind faith and more it is, I understand this is how it's supposed to work. So I'm going to stay true to it and things will work out because that's how they're supposed to work. I'd like to get into some of how you apply this to your marriage relationship piece of your profession and what you teach. I feel like we got a good understanding of getting rid of the stress and, even that you may find that you're with the wrong partner. I think that's something you referenced. We could be with the wrong partner and that could be causing the stress. So how is it that you approach a successful relationship? How would one, we can start with the infancy of the relationship, and then some of us who find ourselves in the middle of a relationship and have some epiphanies. So how do we deal with that?
Well, actually, I've written a book called The 9 Habits of Great Relationships. And in fact, if anyone would like a free copy of that, I think you can get it on Amazon for a few dollars. But if anyone listening or watching would like a free copy, just send me an email to my personal email, which is liam@liamnaden.com, and I'll email you a copy of this book. But the reason I wrote the book, The 9 Habits of Great Relationships, is that when I started to work on helping people with relationships, again, it was from my own wanting to understand, because I'd been married twice and both ended up rather catastrophically towards the end. And I thought, I want to figure this stuff out because I want to have a great relationship with somebody. I don't want to keep having mess, ending up in mess in my life. So I went on a study, a very intensive study of what is the difference between people who have great relationships and the vast, which is only not a small percentage actually, and the vast majority of people who either struggle in relationships and then end them, or who just are in a mediocre relationship and then that they settle, if you like, for what it is. And they say things to themselves like, oh, well, everyone knows relationships are difficult and you have to work on it, and no relationship's perfect. Well, you tell that to the small percentage of people who have great relationships, because you find their relationship is perfect. They're not working. It's not a struggle, you know, and it works, and things get better and better, and they're not focused on trying to make the relationship work. So what I found was the underlying difference, if you like, because we can all talk about techniques. What are they doing differently? And that book, I talk about a lot of things that people do differently, but they've made a habit. That's why I call it habits again, out of doing something differently, which comes from a different mindset. So, and the mindset comes from the way they're using their brain. And in fact, it was all my work in marriage and relationships that led me, was another area, if you like, or another major clue as to why I should be looking at how the brain works, because I was always puzzled when through my coaching programs, and I still have my coaching programs, which are a big part of what I do to help people heal their marriages and their relationships. But what I couldn't figure out was, with the same information, and it's very effective information, but some people were getting good results and other people weren't. And I thought, I need to find out why, with the same information, why are some people getting good results and others aren't? And what I realized, it was not a question of motivation. I mean, when somebody, most of the people who come for my help, they're facing divorce. It's a serious problem. And they're very, very motivated to do anything they can, they say they are, to healing their marriage and getting it back on track. So it wasn't about motivation. That's not what made the difference. It wasn't about information, because some people would come to me and they'd done counseling for years, or therapy, or they'd read tons of books, they'd watched lots of YouTube videos, they'd done other courses on healing their marriage with other people. They had a ton of information. And other people knew virtually nothing apart from, I just want to fix this marriage. That didn't make much of a difference either. It also wasn't a question of prayer. Some people would pray every day for their marriage, other people didn't pray at all. That didn't have an effect. What I realized what it was it was how they were using their brain, and the fundamental difference in the way they're using their brain. And if you really think about this, the difference between a great relationship and a mediocre or an unhappy relationship is the presence or absence of fear. In other words, when you're in a great relationship, the people in great relationships, they don't have any fear. And a way to think about this is when people get together. So think, if anyone's listening or watching, think about when you first got together with your, maybe who is now your spouse or your partner, and think about, did you have any fear at the time? Were you worried about where things were going? Or right at the beginning, when things were going really well, when you were really happy, you didn't have any fear. You were just enjoying the relationship. You were enjoying learning about the other person. You were excited to be there. You weren't worried about whether it was going to last or whether, what was going to happen. You just really enjoyed the moment of being with this person. And the people in great relationships manage to keep that going. They don't have any fear about their relationship. And they have the attitudes like, I'm here because I want to be here. Now, a lot of this is subconscious. A lot of people wouldn't be aware this is what they're thinking, but it is. I'm here because I want to be. And if at any time we decide this is no longer right for us, then we know we've got the freedom to leave. And it won't be a big problem. It won't cause any great, awful things to happen. Well, it's the right decision. If it's no longer working for us, it's the right decision. Something better will come along for both of us. Our children will be fine. They'll be okay if we split up. Now, the irony of it is, when you think like that, what happens? When you're not full of fear, or when you don't have any fear, who are you? You're being yourself. You're being the happy, loving person that your spouse fell in love with to start with. You're being yourself. You're not bogged down by all these fears and stresses and worries about what they do and what you do and what might happen, all this. You're just enjoying the moment. You're enjoying being there. You don't get upset so much if they say or do something that, you go, oh, we made a mistake. No big deal. Let's move on. Let's get back to having fun. Again, you did all these things early on in your relationship. So in an ironic sort of way, a lack of fear doesn't mean you're not committed to the relationship. In fact, those people are more committed because they say, we're here because we want to be, not because we feel we have to be. Whereas most people, what they are in a relationship is they're afraid. They're worried about losing it. They're worried about upsetting the other person. They're worried about things not going in the right direction. They're worried about not achieving all of their goals and dreams, or it not being the best relationship they could possibly have. They're worried about the effect that their dissatisfaction or unhappiness might have on their children. They're worried about their problems. And what does that do? Biologically, it puts them in this limited state again, like we're saying. So they're going to stay stuck in the problems. So the main thing I teach people in relationships now as well as all the technical things that you need to do, you need to go inside and say, what are the fears that are holding me back, that are keeping me stuck, and that are stopping me from saying, I'm not attached to whether this relationship survives or not, this marriage. If it does, it's meant for the best. If it doesn't, it's meant for the best. But I've got to get on and focus on being the best that I can be so that the right things happen in my life. Because if it, as I say, if it's not meant to be, it means something else better is coming along. And when people do that, they turn into, or they become their authentic self, and the right things happen in their life, the right things for them.
Yeah, I can totally see everything you're saying there. You release yourself from the chains that are messing you up. I know, not necessarily chains that are binding you, but thoughts and things that drive us to places, as you reference, not being our authentic selves. It drives us to being paranoid or acting in a certain way. That's all. I get all that. I know that again, some people are they need to check out your book. How do I stop worrying? I follow your practice. I am not at all worried in my relationship, and I don't have fear. It's all excitement and great gratitude. I'm very grateful for my partner. So I practice these things you're talking about, and I'm probably going to learn more from you as well. So if you're in, what would be some not quick fix steps, but I don't hear you saying that couples should run to a therapist if they have some issues, but maybe some ways. Is this something you communicate with your partner? Hey, I want to make some changes. I want to live my best life, and I'm going to eliminate fear and stress from my life. And that includes worrying not about you as a human being, but worrying about whether we're going to make it, worrying about what you're doing, worrying about this, that, and the other. How is that something you sit down and talk with your partner about, or?
Well, the key element, and it's really one of the things I say, and one of the fundamentals is your relationship with somebody else. It's not really about your relationship with them, it's about your relationship with yourself. So if you want to improve everything else about yourself, and again, this ties in with what we've been talking about biology, how your brain is designed when you use it the right way, when you allow the right part of the brain to bring all of the right things for you and make sure you do all the right things. So when you focus on getting yourself right, if you like, what you do is you find automatically your interactions with other people become right. You do and say the right things at the right time. And again, we've talked earlier about people trying to fix problems and to make themselves feel good. But you need to do it the other way around. You need to say, I need to sort myself out so that the right things, my brain, in other words, gets me to do the right things at the right time. Because here's the thing, how many times have you been, not you necessarily, but people watching or listening, think about this. How many times have you got into an argument with your husband or your wife or your partner? And, for some reason, one of you got upset, might not be for any reason. You just suddenly, and you said something hurtful and you got into an argument. And what do you find yourself doing? You find yourself saying things that make things even worse. You start to get angry and you start to shout at them, or they start shouting at you, and then you shout back. And then you say something hurtful. And even when you're saying it, you're saying to yourself, I shouldn't be saying this. This is not going to help. But certainly later, if you're really honest and you look back on it, you realize that all of these heated arguments and you lashing out, it only ever makes things worse. We still do it. We don't know why we're doing it, even though it makes things worse. And we think back and go, why did I say that? That was so stupid. It didn't help. It only made things worse. And the reason we do that, not because we want to, but because we've activated the part of our brain that is literally doing that for us. Because this part of the brain that I call the survival brain, that contains the fight-flight mechanism, it's a reactive state. So it just reacts, it lashes out. It's there to fight off instantly. So if someone came running at you, it would get you to put your hands up or run away, or just do an instinctive fighting off the danger. And that's what you do in an argument. You fight off the comment of the other person. And so it becomes this battle between these two children, really, these little parts of your brain that are just fighting against, it's not helping the situation. So what's more important there, and this is the problem, I guess, that I've found for me personally and for other people who've asked me, who've sought my help, is often when you go to counseling or therapy, what happens is they say to you, why did you do that? Or your spouse, why did you do that? And you try and analyze why you did it. And then you try to come up with a reason or an alternatives to not do it the next time. But the next time comes along and you still do it. You're in the same situation. You go, oops, no, I shouldn't have done that. Hang on, what did we figure out why I shouldn't do it? And you're trying to use this thinking part of your brain, but you're in a reactive state. So your thinking part's all shut down. So trying to figure out what to do in any situation, you're never going to be able to do it, because if you're feeling stressed, because you're activating a very limited part of your brain that only reacts, it doesn't think. So you'll never remember to do the right thing. That's why you need to focus on activating your creative brain and getting rid of your fears. And if I was to say, what's one thing, not a quick fix, but one of the fundamental things that I teach people, and you really need to focus on, but I'm like the driving instructor who's going to show you how it all works, get you to practice it, but not expect that you're going to do it instantly perfectly, like you wouldn't. It's not an instant thing. It's to start to say to yourself, whenever you feel something about your relationship, or in fact anything in your life that doesn't make you feel good, what are you afraid of? So if your spouse or husband, if you look at your marriage and say, oh, it's not as good as I would like it to be, and it really makes me unhappy, or that they do something that I don't like, I have some processes in my coaching on how to really do this, but basically you need to find out what it is you're afraid of. What is the fear that you have around that? Because you're feeling bad about a situation because your brain is saying there's something that could harm you here. There's something you need to be afraid of. And it's often very subconscious. So you might be thinking, well, if I couldn't stand the thought of my husband or wife saying they wanted a divorce. Why not? Why would that make you stressed? And the fear that you have about the end of your marriage, is all things we talked about earlier. You would have a fear that you'd never find somebody else as good, that you would be alone and lonely, that you'd lose all your money, that your children would be harmed, that your children might not talk to you again, that you would look back on your life with all of these regrets, that you'd failed and you were that close to creating a great relationship, but you gave up. You were a failure in life. So all of these subconscious fears would make you feel bad. And when you feel bad, you activate the wrong part of your brain. Whereas if you can retrain your brain to realize just because your husband or wife says they want a divorce or wants to end your marriage, that doesn't mean you're going to end up alone and homeless. Doesn't mean you're going to be a failure or filled with regrets or your children are going to be harmed. None of those things are true. It's going to mean the opposite. So that helps you get rid of those fears. And when you get rid of those fears, that's when you activate your creative brain and you do the right thing in that situation. So if your husband or wife comes along and says they want a divorce, your brain will show you the right thing. And it will be to act in a way that is a lot more empathetic, understanding, sympathetic of them, and makes them feel a lot better about you, so that maybe they realize they're making the wrong decision. That's one outcome. Or it could be your brain saying to you, well, yes, this relationship, it's past its use-by date. It's time you left it because we've got something much better for you lined up, but we wanted you to learn from this experience all of the things that you need to take you to the next level of your life, or anything in between. We only know that when we allow our brain to do it. And one thing I should say about this part of your brain, remember I mentioned it's creativity, imagination, resourcefulness. It's not thinking. This doesn't come from your thinking brain. I interviewed, just on a separate thing, I interviewed a chap recently, became a good friend, a billionaire, and I said to him, how did you manage to achieve such enormous success in your life? And he teaches it in a different way, a slightly different way, but the same message. And he said, Liam, I don't know. I don't know how I got to where I was in my life. It just happened. It certainly wasn't on a goals list. If I'd sat down and put down on my goals, this is what I'm going to do in my life, it would never have been this. It would never have been a billionaire with 2 private jets and a business with 1 million customers around the world in 80 countries. Would have been that. And what he was acknowledging, what we talked about, is you don't do this. You don't heal a relationship. You don't find the right relationship. You don't find the right things in your life by struggling and trying to find out how to do it. Instead, I should just say I have a program called the Let Yourself Off the Hook online masterclass. I've got a podcast called Let Yourself Off the Hook as well. And I've really created this as my byline because you have to let yourself off the hook. And what that means is you have to stop trying to make things happen in your life through force and struggle. You have to stop trying to solve your problems and reach your goals with struggle. Instead, you have to realize that you have this natural creative energy. There's this natural creative part of you that will take care of it all, will make sure that everything happens that's right for you so that you are the best that you can be. And when you acknowledge that, when you do that, what you're actually doing is you're activating this other part of your brain. And that part of your brain is not going to lead you through force and struggle. It's going to lead you down the fastest and easiest path to you being the best that you can be. That's what it's designed to do. But you have to let yourself off the hook from trying to force it to happen and trying to use your thinking brain. That's not where it's going to come from. It's going to come from inspiration and other ideas and intuition and creativity.
Yeah, I get it. That was a lot. I'm so appreciative that you shared that with us. Once we can eliminate, and I've been able to do it a lot with perspective too, with being, looking at it the appropriate way. And I share with my audience how obviously when your child dies, it's awful and there's no getting around how awful it is. But today, with the perspective that I have, and as you noted, I wouldn't even be talking to you. I wouldn't be doing the podcast. None of this would be occurring in my life if that hadn't occurred. And so I'm grateful that I've been able to turn this into what I've been able to, and not worry and stress about it. Man, I'm really appreciative to have had you on today and for you giving us so much time of your time. It's all the things you're saying I'm in tune with, and I'm appreciative that you're out here talking to people about. And again, I'm going to have a link to Liam's website. What was the name of your podcast again, if people want to go check it out?
It's called Let Yourself Off the Hook.
Let yourself off the hook. Yes, I love that. Go get some grace in here, even if it's just ourselves giving it to ourselves. Liam, please be safe on your travels. It has been such a pleasure to meet you. And again, thank you for your time.
Pleasure to meet you too, Aaron. Thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to share this.